Hi, and welcome back. We're going to do another painting today. Real simple, real easy, two colors. I'll show those to you in a second. I'm going to use my nice flat 1.5 inch flat. It's got a really nice little chisel point on it. I really like that for, doing some finer stuff. This is a 3-inch hake. Any hake will do. Really like the hake brushes. Really expressive, keeps you really painting super loose. And this is of course just a #1 round watercolor brush in case we're going to do any detail. We might scrape. I use these quite often when I'm scraping in to put in some tree branches or whatever. But you could use something like that, a metal point. You could use take a credit card, cut it, whatever. It's something, you just need something to scrape with. I'm going to set these to the side. Some clean, fresh water, and you're going to need a cup of coffee or tea or whatever. Okay, so I have two colors. I have them on these styrofoam plates. This is some burnt sienna, and this is some Payne's gray. I use styrofoam plates. I use styrofoam plates quite often when I'm doing stuff for YouTube, but if I'm mixing up a lot of paint, this allows you to mix up like a whole bunch, a big batch of paint. Usually I'm painting quite a bit larger than this in my own work, but for YouTube, I keep it relatively simple so you can follow along. The other thing that you're going to need is, I'll grab one. Just a regular piece of paper towel, all right? Or tissue, or whatever. Okay, so we're gonna wet all this. The top 2/3 we're gonna wet. And you'll see I have quite a bit of water on there. We're gonna take our brush, we're gonna wet it again, but we're gonna take quite a bit of the water off of it. And I'm gonna pick up a little bit of this Payne's gray. Just a little bit more. Okay, a little bit more maybe. And we're gonna put this right across the top. I'm tapping the brush into the water that's on there. Okay, you'll hear me talk about this quite often. Tapping, I'm just tapping the brush. I'm trying to get some paint off this brush and onto the paper. Okay, I'm just gonna set this aside and set my brushes aside too. And we're going to tip this up. And we're just gonna let the paint run down the page. Just let it run to wherever it's going to go to. I see there's a little dry spot here. So whenever you get a dry spot and you don't want that dry spot, you can just touch it with your finger through the water and it'll wet it enough to allow the paint and the water to run through it. You should see I'm getting a line of water that's coming across here. That's from the water running downhill. So this painting is going to be inspired by my walk this morning. It was very, this is the middle of November here in Canada, and it was very blustery. It was very gray, and not too many colors left in anything. Not really any green. Much of the world here in Ontario in the wintertime is just going to be gray and brown. Now I'm going to tip this back up, get some of this water to go back up into here, pick up a little bit more of that color, and bring it down. That's sort of what it is that I'm going for here. It was sort of a misty kind of a morning. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this brush to the side here for a second. And there's a bit of a creek that came across like this and back that way, but that's not what we're going to do right this second. We're going to put in a little chunk in there. Just take that out. We're going to put in, there's some big, fairly large tree here, so we're going to pick up some quite a bit more paint, and we're going to let that diffuse. Let that diffuse. Let that diffuse in there. There was some now this is just background stuff that we're trying to paint in here right now, okay? So this is not anything that's very close to us. Okay, we're just going to let that diffuse into the water, and we're going to let it go wherever it wants to go. So what you can do is you can take this is a clean damp brush, and we're not going to want it that dark along there, so I'm just going to touch that in there, and you'll see it'll pick up a lot of that paint. Now if you want yours to be that dark, that would be fine, but I want these trees to sort of, you know, wisp away into the background. You can see how that's picked that up and pulled that through there. We're not going to want that. So I'm just going to take again this dried up, this brush that's a little bit drier. Rinse it off. Get some of the, get some of the wetness off of it. Tip it up like this, and you can take this brush and just pick up a little bit of that wetness there. Same with this. Now if you want to keep this tilted up like this until you get some of that running down there, you can just take, I have a little pencil box here, and just set it in there. Get the paint to run down for you for a second or two. And then, you can take your handy dandy paper towel, twist it into a point, and then just pick up some of that moisture. You're probably not going to need all that water. We're going to need it to be wet, but not quite that wet. Okay, and you'll see how much moisture that picks up. I'm going to do the same thing again here, just pick up a little bit more of this. I don't mind those trees bleeding off there, but we don't need them bleeding quite that much. Okay, so on to the burnt sienna. We're going to use this to put a little bit of color into these trees. Just a little bit of water and a little bit of paint, and just some indication of a little bit of color like that. That's right. Okay. And you'll see it's we're starting to get it to pool back up down here again, which just tells us that the water and the paint are running downhill, which is where we want them to go. Take my paper towel again. And that's that. So that's pretty much how I want that to look. So I'm going to take that off the little pencil box there, just let that run back. I'm going to take a little bit more of this water off here. And you'll get used to over many times painting, you'll get used to how much water to leave on, how much water to take off. A good rule of thumb is if the paint is going in a direction that you don't want it to be, there's probably too much water in there, and you can take some of the water off and really get it to go in a direction that you need it to be in. So there's a little bit of a creek that comes down back across like this. We're going to do the same. This is a bit of a hill that comes up like that. And we're going to just leave we're just going to leave that. See, I'm just moving this brush side to side, leaving some of the paint, moving some other paint. Okay, so that's drying up not too bad right in there. So we're going to take a little bit more of this, and we're going to paint some trees on here that are going to be a little bit closer to us. We're going to make this quite a bit more intense. This is again, this is paint pretty much right out of the tube, just like that. Just some maybe indications of some trees that are a little bit further back there. And right now, well, that has all that water in it and it's bleeding pretty good. I'm going to take my little pair of metal scissors and I'm going to draw into this. I'm going to put some trees, some nice branches in there. Don't go too crazy with this. It's pretty easy to go a little bit wild with this. I'm going to put in just a few here maybe also. I'm going to leave that for now. So that's a little bit too much paint right there. Do you see that? It's sort of bleeding off into the sky. So it's a little bit too much paint there. So what you do is you take your paper towel. Take your paper towel and twist it up into a point and just touch it over here to the side. You're just trying to get some of this out of here. Some of the water out of there. And you'll see it'll fill back in with paint and water quite nicely. You just touch it a little bit. Just touch it a very, very little bit. Now you see that looks much more natural. Okay, we're going to go back to this brush, and we're going to put a little bit of color into some of these. And remember, this is for me. This is Southern Ontario in the fall, and we have a lot of brown in our world this time of year. So we're just going to put a little bit of that, a little bit of water across some of those areas. So we're just doing the land right now. We're not going to deal with the water right yet. And we're going to take our burnt sienna again, and just a little bit of water into that. And we're making all these brush strokes are going to go left to right, okay? Big, bold brush strokes. Very loose, very open. Just like that. Now, what I want to do right now is I want to introduce a little bit of Payne's Gray into that. So I'm going to go to my Payne's Gray. I'm going to pick up Payne's Gray. This is very watery. And I'm just going to tap that Payne's Gray into that sienna. Just tap it in there. So I'm not painting left to right or anything anymore. I'm just tapping it in there. And that kind of looks almost as misty as I seen it this morning. So that's turned out not too bad at all. So there's some more. I'm going to put a line of some more intense trees across here. So again, I'm going to use my 1.5 inch brush, and I'm going to pick this up. It's wet, but it's almost right out of the tube. And again, you'll see I'm just tapping it on there. And we'll make some that are a little bit taller, just like that. Just using the tip of the brush. Get some smaller trees in across there. And again, I'm going to pick up some more that's just a little bit more intense. A little bit more intense over here. And then we're going to use some of this that's going to be, we're just going to create some, trying to stay out of the way of the camera. We're just going to create some more that's a little bit darker along here, sort of a marshy kind of an area here. But very, you can see I haven't used any little brushes. I haven't used, I'm trying to keep up with, using the 1.5 and the larger hake. Just gonna put a little bit of color back in here. Let that sort of diffuse into there. Same with this. Now, if I had to describe this water this morning, I would describe it as black. Okay, it was very, very dark water. I'm going to take my brush again, and I'm going to rinse my brush off. Okay, this is all dry paper, right? So remember, one of the watercolor techniques is I'm going to come back here and fix this. I think this is a little too, just going to add some water into that. It's a little bit too intense for that background. A bit more there, and we'll just let that dry. But I'm going to take my brush again. So this happens quite often in watercolor painting. You go, oh, that's too intense a color back there. I'm going to grab a drink of coffee. Remember, patient. We're going to be patient with our watercolor painting. So this water was, I would say, almost flat that came across here. There's barely a ripple in it. Okay, so we're going to take our Payne's Gray and we're just going to go left to right left to right, leaving some of the white space, especially along the edge there. We'll leave some of the white space. But all these lines are going to be left to right, okay? And then we're going to take our brush and dry it off. This, I shouldn't say dry it off, I just wrung it out, sorry, with my hand, but you could dry it off. And what we're going to do is get a very sharp chisel point and just extract some paint. Dry it off again. I really love how this is sort of bleeding up into here and making some little bushes and stuff for me in there without doing, without doing really any work. Just tapping that along there, taking some of that paint off there also. And this is turning out sort of fabulous along there too. And then I'm taking my pair of scissors again. I'm gonna add some little sticks along the shore here. Well, don't get carried away, but it's okay to put some in there. I'm gonna tell you, that's it for that painting. That painting's done. Sign it, away you go. Finished. Okay, so I really love seeing your paintings. If you do something that you are really want me to see, I'd love to see it, send it to me. If you're currently a subscriber, I thank you very much. If you're not currently a subscriber, please consider subscribing to my channel. I hope you learned something today. I hope you had a lot of fun. Keep on painting, and we'll see you again next time.